I want to just speak for a second on President Joe Biden selling Bidenomics in Wisconsin today. Now, yes, I'm an honest broker. He got a good 3.3% GDP number for the fourth quarter, following a good 4.9% in the third quarter, okay? If I were he, I would be bragging about it too. And inflation has come down. All's fair in love, war, and politics. Brag when you can. I get it. I've been there. But of course, Mr. Biden can't help himself, because then he goes hog wild with dumb things about Donald Trump's economic achievements. Dumb things. Here's something Biden said. Take a listen.
My predecessor, though, he chose a different course. Trickle-down economics. Cut taxes for the very wealthy and big corporations, increasing the deficit significantly. That's exactly what happened. He stripped good-paying jobs and shipped them overseas.
I mean, he can't help himself. He just can't help himself. All these attacks are completely wrong, as I've said hundreds of times. Just for starters, the Trump tax cuts increased average real wages by over $6,000, while Bidenomics has seen typical family income drop over $4,000. Distinguished studies of the corporate tax cuts have shown again and again and again they produce more business investment, higher real wages, more productivity, help the lower incomes and minority groups much more than the upper incomes, and they paid for themselves. Now, then there's this baloney about 1,000 billionaires and how they only pay an 8% tax rate. Now, this is wonderful. I'll do it again. I've done this 100 times. This is based on an unrealized capital gains wealth tax that was never implemented into law. Does not exist. There is no such thing. But Biden and his staff keeps including the unrealized income and then applying that to today's tax rates in order to get this phony baloney 8% rate. There is no unrealized capital gains wealth tax, and therefore there is no income to be counted. It's just flat out lies. Staggering. Staggering. Now, Biden's GDP improvement in the second half of last year is a good thing. I admit it. All right, I'm being honest here. Those are the numbers. But without stepping on his line too much, to a great extent, the second half improvement this year offsets the GDP decline in the first half of 2022. Now, Mr. Biden is also right to brag on lower inflation. Okay? Got it. But what's troubling about these GDP reports is that the biggest contributor to growth is government spending. In fact, in the last 2 quarters, government spending had the biggest growth rate of any of the other major categories in the GDP, including consumer spending, okay? This is unhealthy, and ultimately it will prove to be inflationary. Economist Joe Lavorgna has pointed out that government spending in the last 3 years under Biden comes in with a cumulative excess of $3.3 trillion above the long-term trend. In other words, more or less 7.5% growth in spending under Biden versus the 20-year trend of about 5.5%. The sum total of federal spending is rising faster than GDP, and deficits for last year, FY23, and for this year, FY24, are going to come in around $2 trillion per year. And big government spending, which stimulates demand, is not being matched by manufacturing or business equipment, which basically has been flat for 2 years. Now, stay with me, folks. Jean-Baptiste Say, the great French economic philosopher, it may be France's greatest product down through the years. He argued and wrote in the early 19th century that supply creates its own demand. We must produce in order to consume. Unfortunately, Bidenomics thinks that consuming stimulated by government spending will do the job. It won't. That's called too much money chasing too few goods. And that's what causes inflation to go up. And that's the big risk in the economic story. I don't deny Mr. Biden's mini boom in recent months, but I do deny his massive government spending will produce a healthy economy in the longer term. That's all I'm saying, and that's my riff.